Hello everyone. In this class, we'll learn about some basics about hematology. This is a very important topic in general for your career as well as for your exams. By definition, hematology is basically the study of blood and blood cells, and hematopoiesis is the process by which these blood cells are formed. If I say erythropoiesis, then what does it mean? It means the process by which RBCs are formed. If I say megakaryopoiesis, process by which platelets are formed, and so forth. This formation of blood cells occurs in various different sites depending on the age of the individual. So some of these sites include yolk sac, liver, spleen, lymph nodes and thymus, and the most important one is bone marrow. However, you should remember that bone marrow starts producing blood cells only in third to fourth month of period of gestation, that is pregnancy. Eventually, by birth of the child, bone marrow is the only site of production of various blood cells. Let us see this graph to understand the sites of hematopoiesis very well. Initially, it is the yolk sac which produces different blood cells. Later on, liver will take over, then spleen will take over, and by around 4 months of period of gestation or 4 months of pregnancy, bone marrow will start producing various blood cells. However, by the time of birth of the child, bone marrow is the only site which produces various blood cells. Another important thing to understand is which are all the bones whose marrow are involved in the production of various blood cells. When the child is young, all of the skeletal marrow is involved. That is, marrow of all the bones are involved in production of blood cells. As the child grows, by the time he reaches late childhood, only some flat bones, including sternum, ribs, iliac bones, vertebrae, and proximal end of long bones, these are the only bones whose marrow will be producing the different blood cells. Another important thing is in any individual for that matter, as the individual ages, the bone marrow, whatever is there, it will get eventually be replaced by fat. The marrow which has fat is called yellow marrow, and the marrow which does not have much fat is called red marrow, right? Whenever there is increased demand, say in a patient who has some sort of an anemia, obviously that patient has more demand of production of blood cells, right? That time yellow marrow will get converted into red marrow. That is one point. Second thing is, although after birth the exclusive site of development of various blood cells is bone marrow, if the demand is too much, then sites like liver and spleen, which once produced different blood cells, which cease to produce blood cells later on, they will take over. Let us now talk about the various components of blood. So you know that there are many components in blood, namely RBCs, WBCs, platelets, etc. Right? RBCs, as you know, do not have a nucleus. Platelets also do not have a nucleus. So technically it would not be correct to call them cells of the blood, right? So that is why we use this term called formed elements of blood. The formed elements of blood are classified into myeloid series and lymphoid series. Under the myeloid series, you have RBCs, WBCs, and platelets. When I say WBCs, I mean neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils only. Under lymphoid series, we have B cells, T cells, and natural killer cells. What are all the functions of these formed elements of blood? We'll look into that now. RBCs, the main function of RBCs is to deliver oxygen to various tissues and make sure that they function properly. Coming to WBCs, that is neutrophils, eosinophils and basophils, defense against various organisms. When we learn about the variations in WBC count, that time we'll learn about the specific functions of eosinophils, neutrophils and basophils. When it comes to lymphocytes, their function is immune regulation, maintenance of immunity. Lastly, platelets. The function of platelets is to maintain hemostasis. We saw that formed elements of blood were divided into a myeloid lineage and a lymphoid lineage. Let us now see the sites of these myelopoiesis and lymphopoiesis. Basically, the processes by which myeloid lineage is formed and myeloid cells are formed and lymphoid cells are formed. Bone marrow is the important site, most important site for all myeloid cells. Lymphocytes, although they originate in the bone marrow, some of them undergo maturation in other sites such as lymph nodes, spleen and thymus. This had been asked as a question in theory exam once, so we'll just look into it. What are the contents of bone marrow? So bone marrow contains hematopoietic cells, namely which is myeloid series, which has erythroid and megakaryocytes. So erythroid series are basically the precursors of RBCs and megakaryocytes are the precursor cells of platelets. Apart from this, bone marrow also has fat tissue. Remember yellow marrow I told you. Then there are various blood vessels, nerves, reticuloendothelial cells which are nothing but macrophages, and then there is some stroma. We shall now very briefly touch upon the general hierarchy of hematopoiesis. A representative flowchart is put here. We'll dissect into it a little bit. The first cell which eventually multiplies and matures to give all these blood cells is called the pluripotent hematopoietic stem cell. So it is sort of the mother cell. After many steps, these mother cells will finally give the blood cells. This is the hierarchy we are talking about. The first is pluripotent hematopoietic stem cells. Second are progenitor cells. Among progenitor cells, we first have multipotent progenitor cells. Secondly, we have unipotent progenitor cells. Thirdly, we have precursor cells, and finally maturing and mature cells. In this image at the top, you are seeing the pluripotent hematopoietic stem cell. It then divides into two cells. One will be myelopoiesis, involved in myelopoiesis. The other will be involved in lymphopoiesis. After that, you have colony forming units. CFUs are colony forming units. So these both are basically multipotent progenitors. Now, why are these called multipotent? Because you can see that they can differentiate into more than one type of cell. Eventually, when they mature, they will become more than one type of cell. That is why they are called multipotent. If you are talking about unipotent, then that particular cell can differentiate only to form one type of mature cell. Like what is seen in the next one, that is committed precursors. Committed precursors, you can see that they are forming only one cell. For example, CFUE will only form RBC. CFU-MG will only form platelets, like that. After this level, we have some morphologically recognizable precursors, and eventually those will give rise to mature cells. Briefly revising what these various terms mean, pluripotent means ability to generate all hematopoietic cells, all different cells. One more thing is pluripotent cells can regenerate themselves. Okay. Multipotent means ability to produce a limited range but multiple cells. And unipotent means only one type of mature cells they can produce. we have seen that hematopoiesis begins from stem cells and eventually progress through successive steps to become mature cells, right? So what is the driving force behind this entire process? That is what we are going to discuss in regulation of hematopoiesis. There are some growth factors, and these growth factors act at various different stages to help the maturation. These are those growth factors which we spoke about. Can remember one or two of them at each level. The first is stem cell. You can remember stem cell factor, which is the growth factor. Next, multipotent committed progenitors. What are the factors acting? Remember odd numbers 3 and 5. So interleukin 3, interleukin 5. For committed progenitors, remember erythropoietin and thrombopoietin. And lastly, for lymphopoiesis, remember interleukins 2 and 4. Evaluation of blood under microscope has a special significance in hematology in diagnosing various disorders. I'll now teach you some of the basics of this evaluation under microscope. So how do you evaluate blood is by making a peripheral smear. We draw blood from cubital fossa of subjects or patients into an EDTA vacutainer, EDTA tube basically, which has a lavender colored top. From that we take about one small drop, put it on a glass slide, take another glass slide at an angle of 45 degree and smear this. Once we smear it, a tongue-shaped film will be formed. Subsequently, we have to dry the entire smear, and once it is dried, we put Leishman stain. We stain the slide with Leishman stain and then evaluate the slide under microscope. Each peripheral smear will have three parts. The first part is the head, where you had laid down that small drop of blood. Next is the body, and the tip is the tail of the peripheral smear. When we look at this peripheral smear under the microscope, basically we want to find an area where the cells are not overlapping. The reason why we do not want the cells to overlap is because we want to find out the morphology very clearly. That is why we choose a particular zone in this peripheral smear known as the zone of morphology. So that is the junction between the body and the tail, as shown in the image here. Examination of peripheral smear under microscope will be done in this zone of morphology. How do we go about evaluating a peripheral smear? We have to identify normality or abnormality in each of the things that is there in the blood. First we look into RBCs, then we look into WBCs, then we look into platelets. Finally, since Mangalore or coastal area is endemic for diseases like malaria or filaria, we'll be looking at this slide to see if any of these parasites are also there. So those parasites are called hemoparasites, or the parasites which are there in the blood basically. Let us now focus on what normal cells look like in peripheral smear under microscopy. First cell we'll be discussing is RBC, or red blood corpuscle. Normal RBC will be 6 to 8 micron size and less than 1/3 of the central area of the RBC. It will be white, also known as central pallor. This central pallor, the reason for its existence is because of the biconcave shape of the RBC. When we talk about peripheral smear in various diseases in the subsequent classes, we shall be comparing the size of RBC to another cell, because we cannot objectively measure the size of RBCs without any oculometer or anything. So the size of RBC is the same as the size of the nucleus of a small lymphocyte. Very important point, please remember this. The size of a normal RBC is the same as that of the nucleus of a small lymphocyte. Apart from this size criteria, the central pallor criteria or the central white portion criteria also you have to remember, because in anemias, particularly in iron deficiency anemia, the size of this central pallor increases. The changes in RBCs can either be variations in size or variations in shape. Variations in size are called anisocytosis, and variations in shape is called poikilocytosis. If there is variation in both size and shape together, then it is called anisopoikilocytosis. These three terms please remember. For evaluation of WBCs under microscope, we must ensure that the film is well made, that it has all three proper portions, distributions of cells is uniform, and staining is satisfactory. In that distribution of cells is uniform, we can ensure that by examining the junction between the body and the tail. This is how we navigate when we assess WBCs for their morphology. Basically, we have to be looking at the zone of morphology, that is one point, and we have to go through a zigzag manner. The other name given for WBC is leukocyte. So leukocytes and WBCs mean one and the same thing. WBCs are white blood corpuscles and leukocytes mean white cells, right? We all know the various WBCs or leukocytes which are present in the blood. They are neutrophils, eosinophils and basophils. The common name given for these three is granulocyte, and other two cells are lymphocytes and monocytes. We shall now summarize the characteristics of each of the WBCs and also platelets. Firstly, coming to neutrophils. Neutrophils are the most abundant WBCs present in the blood. 40 to 80% of the total WBCs are neutrophils basically. Diameter is 13 micron. RBC diameter was around 7 micron, so this is clearly twice the size of an RBC. And the nucleus is thrown into lobes. Neutrophils will have 2 to 4 lobes normally. And granules are present in the cytoplasm, which are pinkish to purplish in color, and the size of the granules is small or fine. The next granulocyte we are discussing is eosinophil. Eosinophil comprise about 1 to 6% of the WBCs in the blood. Size is similar, maybe slightly bigger than a neutrophil, that is 12 to 17 micron. Nucleus again is thrown into lobes. However, 2 lobes are normal for eosinophils. In neutrophils it was 2 to 4 lobes. In eosinophils, however, the number of lobes is just 2. Cytoplasm again has granules because this is a granulocyte. However, in contrast to neutrophil, the size of the granules is big or coarse and the color of granules is orange. In neutrophil it was pink to purple. In eosinophil it is orange. Third WBC in the granulocyte series is basophil. It amounts to 0 to 1% of all WBCs in the blood. Nucleus is thrown into 2 lobes, that too the lobations are not very proper in basophils. Granules are large in size, that is coarse, but the color is blue as opposed to orange in eosinophils. So B for B, right? Basophils, blue color granules. Till now we discussed the morphology of 3 WBCs who were granulocytes. Next we'll be discussing about the agranulocytes, the cell in focus is monocyte. Monocyte is the largest cell in the peripheral smear. It accounts to 2 to 10% of all WBCs. Size is 15 to 18 micron, that is twice to 3 times the size of an RBC. Nucleus is large and is shaped like a kidney. Cytoplasm is blue. And one more feature is frequent vacuoles can be seen in the cytoplasm of monocytes. Very important feature. The last WBC we'll be talking about is lymphocyte, which accounts to 20 to 40% of the total WBCs in the blood. So this is the second most common WBC in the blood. Morphologically, two types are there. One is small lymphocyte, the other is large lymphocyte. Small lymphocyte is the same size as RBC, like I already told you when we discussed about RBC morphology. Nucleus is single and round. It is not thrown into lobes like what you saw in any of the granulocyte. Cytoplasm is pale blue. And rarely you will be able to see granules in the cytoplasm of the lymphocyte. Most of the times you will not be able to see any granules. The last formed element of blood we are left with is platelets. So platelet size 1 to 3 microns, so it's the smallest of the formed elements of blood. It is lilac in color. However, due to variation in staining methods, in the slides you may be able to see it a little bluish or a little pinkish, doesn't matter. Function wise, platelet, you already know that it is supposed to maintain the hemostasis. So it maintains hemostasis by means of granules within it. Those are purple to reddish in color. In this image you are seeing two cells. On top is the lymphocyte. At the bottom is a large cell which has a kidney-shaped nucleus, which is obviously a monocyte. To the left of monocyte, you are able to see 4 dots which appear bluish in color, small ones. And to the right side, you are able to see 2 dots, one on top of other at the extreme edge of the picture. So those are the platelets. A small refresher slide for you here. I'll describe the characteristics of each cell and then arrive at a conclusion as to what that cell is. Cell A is round, sort of pinkish in color, has a central whitish portion, no nucleus, so it could only be an RBC, no doubt about it. Cell number B, if you see, it has a nucleus which does not have any lobes. Cytoplasm is pale bluish in color. Number of granules are very less, almost negligible. So this is what a large lymphocyte looks like. The difference between a large lymphocyte and a small lymphocyte is that small lymphocyte has very less cytoplasm, while large lymphocyte has somewhat significant amount of cytoplasm. Next is cell C. So this is obviously a granulocyte. Nucleus is thrown into 4 lobes here. So which is the only granulocyte which has 4 lobes? Obviously this is a neutrophil. Cell D, if you observe, again nucleus is thrown into lobes, 2 lobes to be specific. Cytoplasm has granules. They are large granules and orange in color. So this cell obviously is an eosinophil. Cell E, if you consider, no difference from cell C as such. So cell E again is a neutrophil. Cell F, if you see, it's the largest among all the cells. The nucleus is kidney shaped. There is a pale bluish cytoplasm here. So this is clearly a monocyte. The letter G, if you look at, so that is the smallest formed element of blood. You can see those are bluish in color and have granules. However, you do not see any nucleus. So each of those is a platelet. Cell H, if you see, it is a small cell, the nucleus of which is almost the same size as that of an RBC. Cytoplasm is pale blue and very less in quantity. The nucleus is round, almost round, and is not thrown into any lobes. So this is what a small lymphocyte looks like. Cell I, if you look at, the nucleus is thrown into two lobes. Cytoplasm, if you see, however, the granules are very small, minute granules, pinkish to purplish in color. Again, this is a neutrophil. So 3 neutrophils you have seen till now. One with 4 lobes, one with 3 lobes, now with 2 lobes. Last cell is cell J. The nucleus of cell J you are not able to make out properly because the color of the nucleus is similar to the color of the granules, which are big and blue. So this is what a basophil typically looks like. The granules of the basophil will be obscuring the morphology of the nucleus. So we have revised all of the WBC's morphology and also morphology of platelets and RBCs. That was about this class, guys. We'll discuss some more topics in the subsequent classes.